And there's our logo and CalAm's logo. To date, a little over 1,300 or just under 1,400 vouchers have been issued, but not everybody's gotten in their car to go pick up their mulch. Only about 310 pickups have been done by customers for a total of 329 cubic yards. And there's been some additional cubic yardage purchased by the customers. So the difference between the vouchers and the pickup means that we expect to see, maybe 3 times what has occurred to date in actual customer pickup. Fish rescues. You can see the team out on the river. Where the river disconnects, there's need to get in and rescue fish that can't move on their own and that are threatened by the dry back of the river.
Dave, could I just go back 2 slides and with respect to the mulch? Sorry, that's picked up in Salinas, correct?
Yes, it is. That's the site that was chosen.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably a major drawback for anyone picking up mulch. Not to the drive itself, you can contribute to fossil fuels to pick up mulch to save fossil fuels. So, yeah, that if there's any other pickup site, that would, I think, really would help when you consider we're talking about the Monterey Peninsula Water District. Thank you. Go ahead.
Can I just piggyback on that? I picked it up. The pickup is on this side of Salinas, so you don't even go in there or cross the side. It's on 68, right on this side of Salinas. But the other thing I wanted to say is it's easy to pick it up in a car because they bag it for you, and the bags are secured, and you can throw it in your back seat. So you don't need a truck. You don't need to even demand that it go in your trunk. It's easy to pick up, and it's easy to manage because they're in sizes. They're in appropriate sizes for moving around in your car.
Yeah, good to know. Thanks, George.
That would have been good information to put in the ads.
All good points.
all good points. I'm sure
Next year
they're being written down by our water demand people.
I hope so.
Fish rescues. This is through this morning. I can tell you another 1,000 approximately were rescued today.
Wow.
Last week, we only had 1 day of rescues as most of our rescue team was out with COVID or exposure to people with COVID, so in quarantine. So now we're at about 9,800 fish at the end of the day today that have been rescued, mostly in the main stem of the river. And what's happening is we are seeing in the years past, we would often follow the river as the wetted front kind of worked its way backwards towards away from the ocean, away from the lagoon. This year, there's been dry areas that have occurred near certain pumps. And so we've had to jump around a little bit. So we're not just following the recession of the river, we're going to wherever the hot spots are. And then finally, and this is all of the fish rescues by year to date, and this can be found on our website for those folks who are interested. And you can see here in some of the drought years, rescues were down, mostly because the river didn't come back, and so it was not, there were less fish, less spawning, less activity during the period of prolonged drought. And you can see that also again in the late 80s, early 90s, which is down in this area where the series begins. And then finally, this was our outreach ad for the written publications, again, talking about Pure Water Monterey. More than 1 billion gallons delivered during the fiscal year, 56 million gallons put into storage for future need, whether it be a shortage or an emergency. Very rigid guidelines from the State Department of Drinking Water, and just a reminder that the future of water is here. And that segues us into an update on development of water supply projects. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. The only one that's active right now is Pure Water Monterey. And just want to let you know that Deep injection wells 3 and 4 have now been operating at steady injection capacity for a few months. And we have an amended Title 22 engineering report in with the State Department of Drinking Water, who will review it. And then subsequent to that review for our injection permit, it'll be reviewed by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We're currently awaiting a decision from the Public Utilities Commission on the water purchase agreement for the Pure Water Monterey expansion. And that's kind of the critical milestone that we're awaiting. We have a tentative approval from the EPA's Water Infrastructure and Innovation Act, or WIFIA, financing program. And we're waiting, really, the last increment will be the water purchase agreement. So we have a draft funding agreement in place. It's presently being reviewed by bond counsel, but that's expected to be complete here in a week. We're also seeing that we may be experiencing longer procurement lead times for certain items for the expansion equipment and material. And the PUC process has taken a lot longer than originally anticipated. This application went in over a year ago at this point. And then finally, our staff is working with Monterey One water staff and the City of Seaside staff on all of the final easement acquisitions for all of the facilities, both the base project and the expansion project. So it's moving along quite nicely. And that concludes my report on items 10 and 11. Any questions?
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
Go back to that. What's in this person's palm?
That is fresh water.
What are all these things that are cluttering the fresh water? What this hand is?
Right, because the drips are coming from above. It's turbulent, and then when it got blown up a little bit, it got a little fuzzier too.
Is this published already?
Yes. Don't like it, huh?
No, I would have chosen a clean hand that does not have all these injuries or whatever, or worms or whatever is in there that is cluttering that pure water. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. This is constructive feedback.
I'm sure that wasn't the intent.
And
it looks that way
to make matters worse, this is a recycled photo from one of our earlier ones about a year ago. So it's its second time.
I could have volunteered my palms for that.
Excellent.
Okay, for the next one.
Okay, sorry.
Any other questions or comments about the last two items, the GM's report? Okay, then let's move on to item 12, the strategic planning goals.
Yes, and on this one, I think that the staff note was pretty descriptive. However, I do have a brief PowerPoint that just highlights a few of the things, which we can go to or not. Well, that's not working. I'm gonna try it one more time. Here we go. And taking a page out of our earlier closed session reporting, I've put them in red, green, and red, yellow, and green. Yeah. Green are the ones that we've made most progress on or are actively in progress. Yellow is either on hold or moving slowly, and red hasn't gotten started yet. Our first goal, and pretty much the district's primary goal for the last many years, has been to secure a safe, reliable, sustainable, diversified, and affordable legal water supply for the Monterey Peninsula. And we've completed, as I mentioned earlier, deep injection wells 3 and 4 to expand the capacity of Pure Water Monterey. We got to take care of Director Riley. And we had been working on expanding the base capacity by 400 to 600 acre feet per year, but that's reliant on that Title 22 amended engineers report. And it's gotten kind of kicked down the road by the Department of Drinking Water at the state. And we don't expect their review to be complete, best case, until December, which is why this one is in yellow. And that's working in partnership with Monterey One Water, as is the expansion project, which, as I mentioned, the PUC process is as yet unresolved. On our longer term objectives, we will be back with an agenda item at the August board meeting to proceed with the process of acquiring the assets of the Monterey water system of Cal-Am, and we'll talk about that again at the August meeting. But because we don't have the expansion approved, we have not yet, well, we have a plan, but it requires Cal-Am's participation or the state water board's waiving of Cal-Am's participation. And it's likely going to require the testimony of the phase 2 portion of the current Public Utilities Commission process, which is all about supply and demand and meeting future long-term water needs. Our second goal area was the continued pursuit of public ownership of the water distribution system. As I mentioned, we will be back in August, but we are in the midst of the seeking of judicial review of the LAFCO decision. This area is what we'll be talking about in August, which is appraisal, offer, and findings for a hearing of public necessity, which means that the hearing of public necessity is kind of on that yellow zone, probably not likely until very late in this calendar year or early next calendar year. And then any sort of public outreach or public awareness campaign cannot get started until, of course, we're in that mode. And so that's why that one's in red. And same thing with the longer term objectives. Can't do a bench trial till we do the hearing of public necessity up here. And we can't succeed, of course, till we get there and so forth. But we do continue to do the planning for what it might look like here at the district should it be successful. The third goal area is to be a regional leader on water issues and continue to raise the district's profile and work on public trust issues. We did accomplish looking at the RENA numbers, the water for housing. We backed off a little bit up in Sacramento on the water for housing relative to condition 2 of the cease and desist order, but it has not been forgotten. We've been coordinating with other agencies pretty regularly, to be honest. We've got a very good cooperative job-alike group with the general managers of both public sector and investor-owned utilities here locally. We continue to, respond to the press and make data available and fulfill that position. The Salinas and Carmel River Basin studies, we are a little bit at the mercy of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, who's driving that process, and it's not moving as quickly as we would like. And we are continuing to coordinate and communicate, as mentioned earlier, with other districts. We remain the coordinator for the IRWM, or the Integrated Regional Water Management Program process. And these are just remaining in the long term of what we talked about on the short term. Area number 4 is looking for long-range surface and groundwater resource needs. And the Los Padres Dam Alternative Study is in its final point. We're waiting for the final write-up I think it's expected by October. We've met a few times on protective water levels with the Seaside Basin, but I don't think there's a clear path on that yet, although we've talked a little bit about some ideas for funding that water that we'll be working on. There's some revision to our Rule 160 through 164. Every May 1st, you look at that, and that's where the 15-month forecast is, and where we make a declaration if we have enough water in storage or not. And we did that this May. But I think as we move forward to a lower water right by Cal-Am off the Carmel River, the impacts of the non-Cal-Am pumpers become more significant on a relative basis. And so one of the things we want to do is go relook at what we're assigning to the non-Cal-Am pumpers. And so this will eventually turn to yellow and hopefully green before the year is out. The climate change impacts, that's a significant piece of that basin study that I mentioned earlier, and that we're a little bit at the mercy of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation on the timing and progress on that. We've already talked about protective water levels, both up here as a near-term and a long-term goal. And then we continue in the regional discussion, as we mentioned in the last goal area. And then earlier I mentioned some of our funding successes. So I think we're doing the best we can, which is why that's green lighted in this case. Goal area number 5, which is protect and enhance the district's financial resources. We just adopted a budget for the fiscal year going forward. We're in the midst of our audit. At the conclusion of the audit, we'll apply for another GFOA award. We've got a continuous streak of about 8 years going. I see no reason for that to change. We maintain our CSDA, which is California Special Districts Association Transparency Certificate. We have continued to inform the board about strategies for PERS and post-retirement liabilities. And we have set aside some monies in funds and created named funds for that purpose in our series of reserves. We will pay down a portion of the Mechanics Bank loan here in July or August, about $500,000. And we will begin to look at whether that loan should be refinanced or paid off with district reserves at the end of this fiscal year. We continue to improve our asset management documentation in our budget process. And we're getting more and more financial documents posted online. Suresh always loves it when I put the heat on. But usually, somebody asks for, where's your budget? I know you passed it. Why isn't it on the website? And so that's the goal now, is to try to get these things available within 1 month of adoption. And we continue to make progress on the district's adopted policy of now 4 years ago to try to generate any surplus user fee revenues to start continuing to pay down the Mechanics Bank loan. We did a payment last year. We'll do a payment this year, and then pay ourselves back for some of the water supply projects. Promote and enhance organizational efficiency and effectiveness. We did look at remote work policies. We did a survey of many special districts. We've come to the conclusion that we're not going to have a formal schedule of employee remote work, that it will be on a case-by-case basis between an employee and his or her supervisor, and with attention given to whether an employee is a customer-facing employee, a field-working employee, or kind of a back-office operations employee. I can tell you the survey that we did indicates that the majority of other special districts do not have a remote work policy, and those that don't tend to only use it when somebody tests positive or has an exposure to someone who's tested positive and needs to quarantine for 5 days. There are 3 special districts that do have a policy that's ongoing, one requiring at least 2 days a week in the office for certain classes of employees, and the two others requiring at least 3 days a week for certain classes of employees. But one of the special districts that shall go nameless said our policy is show up for work or you're fired, which I think represents one far end of the spectrum. And one of the other agencies has a you need to be in the office 3 days a week, including a Wednesday called Work Wednesday, so they can schedule meetings and collaborative work and so forth. But the spectrum in between is not very vast. That most, as I said, agencies do not have a remote work policy. We need to update ours because we have one that's grossly ineffective for where we are today, and that's in the last stages of editing. You've requested that I identify the type of support needed in my office, and in conjunction with two other management employees, we've been talking that one through, and we've got some ideas. And then electronic document storage, we continue to try to make progress there. I just got educated in how to find personnel records online, so that's a bonus. But we've made no progress in developing a sustainability plan for the district, which will probably include picking up mulch at a closer location next year.
And spreading it all around the district headquarters.
Exactly. Overhaul the public outreach effort. For those of you who sit on the public outreach committee, you know how challenging that is going for us. The overhaul requires a decision on who's going to represent us in those activities, an employee or a consultant, and whether that consultant can be found locally or we need to go to a little greater talent pool. So we still have public awareness going, as you can see from the ads and the activities and the webinars that we've been doing. We're not there yet on Measure J. Hope to be there with these activities we'll talk about in August. But this one, a new public outreach model, we've talked about it quite a bit, but we're just not there yet. And so none of the long-term objectives are getting dealt with because we can't take care of that near term. And that concludes an update, the mid-year update on strategic goals.
Dave, thank you very, very much for that. It's really excellent. And I find, as a board member, very, very helpful to do that review and assessment. And first of all, to remind ourselves of what our goals are. And there's so many moving parts. So to be reminded of, and to take stock of, where we're making progress, where we, just where we are in all of those efforts. I find it very, very helpful. And for members of the public who are following what the district is doing or trying to follow, I imagine it's equally helpful, especially since that PowerPoint will be posted on our website, I assume.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Do members have comments or questions on any of these? Yes, George.
I was glad to see that there seems to be an end or coming near to the end, Los Padres Dam alternatives. I'm guessing, and maybe you can just expand or just a touch on this, Dave. That's gonna demand a fair amount of time in sorting out the alternatives and addressing high priority aspects of the alternatives. I'm just guessing, asking.
Yeah, no, you're correct, and there are. We've kind of coalesced around 4 alternatives, 2 for upstream fish passage and 2 for downstream fish passage. And those will likely gain a lot of attention, but the concept of sediment management, whether you dredge behind the dam or you do nothing and leave the dam alone, and eventually it will become worthless for storage, and at what pace that happens.
Mm-hmm.
The sediment management part is, let's put it this way, leaving the dam in place is going to be very, very expensive. And taking the dam out is going to be very, very expensive. And so there's going to be, you know, in the aftermath of the San Clemente Dam, which, as you know, is still being paid for as a regulatory asset with rate recovery, there could be some sticker shock over what to do with the dam. And if there's no activity on a final physical solution, so final physical solution would be to make the decision to take it out and increase habitat at the expense of a controlled wetted front. And, you know, being able to release more water later into the season helps with keeping the river vibrant and alive for fish and for vegetation. And so a lot of the folks have kind of changed their initial opinion coming in about, no, we need to take that dam out because there are certain benefits to the threatened species with leaving it in place. But if you leave it in place, then to annually manage the sediment is going to be a very expensive proposition, as I said. And to not manage it means that you've now agreed to eventually remove the dam at some date in the future. So there's going to be a lot of hand-wringing over those. And I think what will happen is, as those hands are wrung, someone else is going to come and say, well, if you can't make a decision on what to do with the dam, the least you have to do is fix the fish passage. And that's where you come back to, there's kind of a most expensive and least expensive alternative for upstream and most expensive and least expensive for downstream. And so these parts may get pulled apart and addressed separately at different times in our future. But
I was hoping I would get, my brain would start to work on this next month or two. It's already started. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's quite a bit of work that's been done, and there's a very good, thorough technical review team in place, but the final write-up hasn't happened, and we'll get it to you as soon as it's off the press.
Yeah, and I'm just looking forward to it. That's what I really wanted to comment on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Supervisor Adams.
Thank you. I wanted to back up a little bit and ask a question about expansion. And I know we're waiting with the CPUC to come up with the water purchase agreement. But what I was wondering about is two things. One, have we started, or are we going to start working on doing the water allocations for pure water expansion? And then in addition to that, do we have to wait until the CDO is actually lifted before we can use any of those additional water sources?
That's a pretty good question. So we have in the past allocated water to jurisdictions in anticipation of a new project coming online.
Right.
And that is a possibility here. But the starting of the allocation process is basically the same day that we get a water purchase agreement amended and restated water purchase agreement signed. Because that means now we've got water that's coming 20 to 24 months down the line. And so that's what we've been waiting on all along, is the next increment of water to actually be inked as a deal. And then we'll come in, or we'll bring in all the jurisdictions and we'll talk again about their needs and the allocation. The goal here will be to make sure every jurisdiction has enough water to do what it wants to do in the next 7 to 10 year horizon, but not to allocate all the water and then just wash our hands of it and walk away, because growth is going to occur in different parts of the system at different paces. And I think some of the, I won't say mistake, but one of the offshoots of the last allocation process is Pacific Grove ran out of water to allocate. Monterey ran out of water to allocate. Seaside still has quite a bit of water, but that's because most of their growth was focused on the redevelopment agencies, which A, got taken away by Governor Brown, and B, require the setting of new meters. and they don't have enough infill projects for which new meters aren't necessary. So they're sitting here waiting on new meters, which can't happen until the CDO is lifted. So our goal is to start that process with the letting of the construction contracts, and then to have it ready to go before the project comes online.
Thank you.
Yep.
So who can we nudge at the CPUC?
I was
Well-
going to say, it's so frustrating that it's taking so long. We had hoped when we filed that application that we're hoping for decision in maybe 6 months or a little bit more than 6 months. And looks like it's going to end up taking a year and a half. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah, the chair is spot on. And when we set, for example, there's a date for performance in the contract. Well, the three parties who drafted the contract, and remember there was some lengthy discussion over a couple of sections of the contract that we had difficulty living with. So that took a while, but we finally got there. And all of the applicant and the interveners all said, can you expedite this? Can you expedite it? Thinking maybe 180-day process. And that was kind of the expectation when we put a date in the contract. And here it is, it's over a year. And the judges said a proposed decision within 90 days of the reply briefs, which puts it at about September 19th. And I've not really seen any of those proposed decisions come in much ahead of what's in the scoping memo, and that's what's in the scoping memo. And then when a proposed decision comes out, there will be an identified next voting meeting of the commission, and we're thinking this one will probably be identified as the October 20th voting meeting. And then once they vote a final decision, it usually takes another 5 days before it's published. On average, it's about 41 days from the publication of a proposed decision that you get a final decision. And so until a final decision is rendered, we have nothing to sign. So, we'll be looking at what we thought might be 180 days turning into a year and 4 months, 5 months.
We did everything we could possibly do to expedite, and you would think when all the parties in the meeting, we support the application, please approve it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's where we are.
Thank you for the update.
Any other questions or comments on the GM's report?
Just a quick comment.
Roberson.
I appreciate the review of the strategic goals. I've seen a strategic plan or two in my lifetime as a teacher and as a council member and mayor. And it's this, I like this because Dave, you did a great job of explaining the goals and how we're meeting those goals without burdening us with a lot of micro information. I thought that was a really good summary, something that we and the public can digest nicely. It's a really good exercise to do that. And I think we're going to suggest we do that in the city as well, because we have 9 value drivers and it would be good just to review them because we do forget. So thanks so much. Excellent.
I completely agree. It's a living document. It's not something we write and then forget.
Oh, those shelves are full of those.
That's right. Yep. Any other comments or questions on the GM's report? If not, we can. Next item on our agenda is to report from closed session. And I just, before I turn it over to you, General Counsel, just say for the public that there were 2 items on the closed session agenda. We to the first, which is basically that we received a briefing on the cyber assessment and asked questions about it. And that was basically, that took an hour. And we'll have to turn to the second item after the public meeting. Did you want to say something more, Dave Laredo?
As a matter of fact, I did. There are actually two meetings, two sets of closed sessions that needed to be reported. Your council, your board did meet in a special board meeting on July 8th, Friday, July 8th, in closed session. And there were 3 items on that agenda. There was the conference with legal counsel because there had been threats of breach of contract concerning the storage and recovery agreement and the water purchase agreement between CalAm and the Water Management District. There was a discussion of that. The second item was a conference with real property negotiators, and this had to do with the acquisition of CalAm's public utility properties in accord with Measure J of 2018. And then finally, there was a review of the general manager's performance and a discussion of that as well. As to all 3 of those items, there was a robust give and take with the board and staff and council, but there was no reportable action that was taken on the 18th. I'm sorry, on the 8th. And then
18th?
Earlier, as you noted, there was the closed session tonight. No reportable action on the consultation with the cybersecurity assessment. And the second item, we will reconvene in closed session following the opening session tonight. And that topic is the conference with labor negotiators. So that concludes my report on 2 meetings, 5 closed session items.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to create confusion. Sorry about that. Okay,
Through the chair, if I may.
please, Director Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Laredo, have we heard anything from the judge on the LAVCO letting CalAm intervene?
No, we have not. The judge has the judge has indicated that there would be intervention. There is a proposed order that has been submitted, but that order has not yet been signed.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
we're still waiting for the certification of the administrative record in that case. Is that right?
That is correct as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on those matters? Okay, then this is a time in our agenda for directors' reports on meetings with outside other agencies. Supervisor Adams, did you have
I did not,
something you wanted to? Okay.
but I do want to say something at the end.
Don't let me forget.
Okay.
Any other directors want to report on meetings? I am going to go to the Special District Association
Well, Amy's
meeting
hand.
tomorrow night. Director Anderson.
No, go ahead. I didn't know what you were.
I just started to say that there's a meeting of Special Districts Association tomorrow night, and I will be going to that. Yes, you had something to report?
Well, I just wanted to say that George Riley hosted with the League of Women Voters, right, George?
Yeah, the League of Women Voters hosted it.
Yeah, yeah, but you were kind of the host.
Yeah, I called it together. That's true.
Yeah, the Pajaro Valley Water District. And that was quite interesting. I didn't know much about it. So it was good and I thank you, George, for probably recommending that to the league. And I'm glad they did.
And I was there, so you're right.
You're there.
It was a water meeting.
Yeah. I attended that as well. And I thank you, George, I think it was very worthwhile. Very good to exchange information with other agencies about what they're doing.
If I could just add a little humorous footnote. Dave earlier in his report showed a laser pointer for this.
Yeah.
And I remember the Pajaro Valley group used a laser pointer, and I was just falling over myself congratulating them on making it easy to understand and follow as he's going around his presentation with this pointer all over the chart, and it was so easy to follow. Anyway.
Yeah,
Funny.
it was a lot
Hey,
of
It
maps.
was good to see, Dave. See.
Ask and ye shall receive.
Director Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Just a public announcement that today I signed up for 4 more years on the board
Hey,
with the election department. Since the mayor is leaving us, I said I'll stay. So I put my application in for 4 more years. So I'm on the ballot, I hope. Thank you.
all right. And all the people said amen.
That is very good news, in my opinion. So
Thank you, Mayor.
And as we're making confessions, I intend to do the same thing, but I haven't done it yet.
What's your deadline,
Excellent.
George?
The end of this month.
oh,
August the 12th is
Well,
the
no,
deadline.
when I actually do the work, it'll be
Yeah.
end of this month.
Good.
very interesting. Supervisor Adams.
I just want to ask everyone to put September 20th on their calendars. It is when we're going to have our second water summit. And it will also be held as a Monterey County Board of Supervisors meeting. So it will be 1:30 on September 20th, and it will be both by Zoom and in the board chambers.
Very
MT.
good. And I assume you'll be sending out an agenda maybe a few weeks before the meeting.
Yes, yeah, we'll be reaching out. At this point, we're still formulating the presenters that we're going to have. So it's good. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay. And we have one action item tonight, and that is item 15. Dave Stolt, will you be presenting that to us?
I will. And Joelle, if you bring over the call-in number with the 408 area code, that's Mark Brannon, the owner's rep for Montage. And Mark, is Brett with you or are you on your own?
Hi, Dave. No, Brett Silvestri and I are both here.
Okay, great. So let me introduce this item. Montage Health is endeavoring to put in an approximately 50,000 square foot building, its 4th building on the Upper Ragsdale portion of its campus. The previous 3 buildings are all complete and in service. The most recent was the Breast Care Center, the Women's Health Center. I think Ohana, which is a behavioral, child and adolescent behavioral center, is presently contained in one of those buildings, but its new building is being built down on Lower Ragsdale, also in the Ryan Ranch area. The purpose of our involvement here was kind of twofold. One was to figure out how we're going to permit this thing, but the second was how to allocate water to the project and avoid some of the very costly and difficult challenges that went on for the 2 most recent buildings on that campus. And that was 3 separate purchases of Seaside Basin pumpers, non-Cal-Am pumpers, who had an allotment of water of their own that made it available and sold it at a very high cost with a very complex framework where we had what's called a front-loading agreement, where the interconnection between Ryan Ranch and the Cal-Am main system could be opened, water exchanged from the main system up to an amount representing these purchased allotments, amendments to the water distribution system for Ryan Ranch and to the main water distribution system, as well as the front-loading agreement. And water of that type is very expensive and getting scarcer and scarcer to come by. So we took off put on our thinking cap and said, is there an alternate way that we can ensure that there's water there without having to go through that process? And we came to the Water Demand Committee with a concept of using an existing allocation to the Chomp campus at the top of Highway 68 and Highway 1. And then after thinking about that for a while, Stephanie Locke, with her institutional memory, revealed that we had actually created an overall cap for the Chomp campus, and that special allotment no longer really existed. And that overall cap controlled how much water they could use there. And so we set out to figure out how much water they were currently using, went through multiple years of actual records to determine that they were nowhere near their cap, and that if somehow we could move water from their campus at the hospital to Ryan Ranch, then we could allocate that water and move ahead. It was benefited by both locations being in the city of Monterey, so that opened up the world to possibly a transfer, or just our first idea, which was to just allocate some of that previously existing capped water. What Water Demand Committee did at its July 7th meeting was make a recommendation, and the recommendation is to take the Ryan Ranch campus and move it into the overall definition of a hospital site, and then add the hospital site denotation to our current definition of site, which would be very consistent with what we've done for jurisdictions. Any city property is part of the city site. Unified school districts, any school property is a part of a unified school district site, and accredited institutions of higher learning, such as MIS, where any of their properties would constitute a site. And that got us away from our long-standing requirement that a site had to be contiguous and under common ownership. So that's the proposal that's here. And I'm going to screen share just for a second on a couple of things. So this is a site plan. It's actually their parking site plan, but I'm using it as a location map. This is Ragsdale coming up. That becomes Upper Ragsdale, kind of turns the corner at the Children's Center, which is located here. What's not shown roughly in this location is Harris Court, which turns off this direction to our district. Oh, I forgot the Riley commemorative laser pointer.
The magic laser pointer.
So the district's offices are roughly in this location, and Harris Court comes and tees into Ragsdale at this location. This building was built with two purchases of Seaside Basin alternate pumper water, and the Breast Cancer Center was built with a single purchase of alternate producer water. These two buildings were built a long time ago. This is the one where if you've ever had imaging done up at the Ryan Ranch campus or blood work, this would be the building you would have gone to. The new location is over here, and it represents kind of the last available parcel for building in this Ryan Ranch campus. Our proposal is to take our existing definition of site, delete the or from here, insert it down here with the addition of the term hospital site, and then introduce an entirely new definition, hospital site, which will be all the facilities and properties owned by Montage Health that are patient care facilities located at the following parcels. And then we'll list the parcels and then cross-check it to make sure it's correct. And that's something that administratively we may change a little bit to get the definition right, but Stephanie Locke would be working with Mark Brannon, who's on the phone, and Brett Silvestri. She'll also be working with them to determine if there's additional uses that would warrant a slightly higher allocation of water in the water permit due to chilling or certain processes that aren't just pure office function. The other buildings that you saw here and here were permitted, and actually here and here, all four of these buildings were permitted as simple group 1 office buildings. But as we've dug into things, we realize that there are certain types of uses that might be a little more water intensive than an office. So where the need for this new building, if it were treated purely as group 1, is about 3.5 acre-feet of water, we're concluding that the working number for right now should be 4, and ultimately, if it came to 4.5, there's plenty of room under that cap, which, as you may have seen in the staff note, bring back up the staff note for myself. Yeah, there's about 37 acre-feet of unused capacity under the cap. So, going from 3.5 acre-feet to 4.5 acre-feet, or whatever that number is for this building, is not going to put a dent into that available. So that's the proposal. Our recommendation is for you to approve this preferred option as recommended by the Water Demand Committee, and allow staff to work with Montage to get the details correct and go ahead and issue permits. And with that, we'll take any questions, and keep in mind that the representatives of CHOMP are available for any questions you might have.
Okay, Director Edwards, why don't you go first?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I listened to the meeting of the water demand on this. Just some concerns. We're not getting any water out of district reserves for this project. Are we? Yes or no?
Correct. We are not.
And Mr. Laredo will be on good ground if we do this. We wouldn't have a certain attorney out there calling us saying we violated a rule doing this, will we?
I can't guarantee there won't be someone saying that, but I do believe that you have the authority to do this.
Okay, that's why I wanted to make sure. All right, that's all I have right now.
Yeah, and Stephanie just texted me to point out, we will do this by ordinance because we'll be adding to Rule 11, which is the definitions. So you'll see it there, and there'll be two readings of that.
And this is not a project for purposes of CEQA, because we're just we're redefining the site for purposes.
Yeah, Stephanie.
And that doesn't constitute a project. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, Stephanie, did you do a project checklist or anything for the previous definition change?
I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah,
we'll do
the minimum.
I do believe it's a project. I believe that we can process this without an EIR.
Yeah, so the building itself has its environmental review, which, the Montage Health will be dealing with all of that. The allocation, because the cap already went through environmental review when it was established, and it has not been exceeded, then it's whose project is it? I don't think it's a project for our purposes because it's already been through the process, but by defining the site, it's the same, it has the same possibilities as the 3 previous times we expanded the site definition, where previously you could only move water across the street, or in Van Buren Housing's case, down the street and around the corner. So the location of the water use might be subject to somebody's inquiry. But we'll follow the same sequence that we did for those 3 definition changes.
So I don't know, can you clarify? So this, I assume an EIR has been done or will be done for the facility that's going to be built.
The city will be doing
But-
the seek work for the actual project. But the district, when we do the ordinance, I'll be going through and making sure that we've checked everything.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Mark or Brett, do you want to answer anything about how CEQA will get done?
Well, the project's already been approved back in 2002, I believe, and so we're getting around to essentially the housekeeping for the city and actually trying to go build the building. We're actually building a smaller building than what was titled. So we already have our approvals through the city. We have to go through architectural review and planning commission and those types of things to get the final entitlements and approvals. And again, part of that is we have to show up with water. We'll serve letter from PG&E and alike. So as far as any impacts to the community or anything else, those have already been taken into consideration when we got the original entitlements.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think the only thing that changed was trees grew, so you had to redo your tree survey.
The trees that we planted, yes, ironically enough.
Oh boy.
Did the city give you a negative declaration?
On the original campus, yes, and we had defined the five parcels in the campus, which 4 of those are for buildings. The one that we're specifically speaking about is parcel 1. And on the map that Dave had up, this looks like an upside down T, where it says the next proposed building. Well, we're only doing something on the upper part of that. Again, we're building a smaller building than what was originally entitled. And this gets into parking counts and everything else. Again, the approvals are there. We do have to go in, but because we already have our entitlements locked in back in 2002, we're only obligated to meet those conditions for environmental impact and what have you. Because again, we did get the entitlement. So parcel 1 has building D. That's one that has imaging and radiology. This is the second building that'll go on that parcel. Parcel 2 is actually I believe the medical office building. I'm sorry, it's building B. That's those are doctor's offices. Parcel 3 was the breast care center. And parcel 4 was the medical office building A that we completed. So this is the last structure to be built on the previously entitled campus.
Understood. Thank you. What was the slide?
Yeah, and when originally envisioned, this was even going to be a larger building than what
were you showing us?
Yeah, if you're seeing this on screen. So yeah, sorry, Mark, I wasn't able to keep up with you with the location map, but
yeah, it gets a little confusing. What I'd like to do too, if I may, that didn't really come up is one of the reasons that this campus was being built and we really can't expand up at the main hospital any longer is because we did a 16-acre open space dedication into an irrevocable open space easement. So the hospital proper can't really expand its footprint. And that's part of our dilemma. And so we've been moving non-essential facilities out of there, like human resources, finance, the insurance department, those different types of things. And then moving the ancillary operations up here to where we can have people come up to this Ryan Ranch campus and see physicians, get MRIs, CT scans, that type of thing. So even if we wanted to use the water at the main campus, we can't because we really don't have any.
Well,
built.
Yeah. And the answer to the mayor's question was when I talk about going back in time, Hayward Norton's staff note
Wow.
said, let's see, it's finding 14, a negative declaration has been prepared for the project and staff recommends planning commission approve the negative deck with the proposed mitigation measures. So that's what they did.
Yes. Could I ask maybe a related question, or maybe it's not related? In the past, when the city of Monterey wanted to transfer water from one parcel to another, it was determined by the water district that the parcels were supposed to be contiguous, right next to one another. However, because the city owns the city streets, then water on one east side of Monterey can be transferred to water on the west side of Monterey because it's contiguous, because it's owned by the city. So the city streets allowed us to do that. And this is somewhat analogous, I think, where you take a look at the whole site, the whole operation as a whole, rather than where its individual parcels are. And so with this concept, do you think, and Dave, General Manager, you mentioned school districts too, but something like this be worth exploring for MPWMD as they close schools?
Yeah, we did. So the first one we did was for the cities because while now that you've explained it to all of the public out there, yes, that is what we did because we wanted to make sure that Van Buren housing got done. But even our general counsel and a few of our staffers said, well, that was really creative, Dave Stolt. Let's not have to do it again that way. Let's change the definition. So we did jurisdictions first, and then we came back for the school districts and added them to the similar treatment. And then our third round was the accredited institutions of higher education. So that model evolved because of the cities, and
then the Army and naval support activities also. Remember,
that's right. We put it in there, but they don't have an allocation yet. Right. Yep. So yeah, it just makes sense for the reasons you kind of laid out there. If you close a school or you're following your enrollment, you need to be able to move that water around, and that it completely made sense.
Yep.
I just want to say hooray for institutional memory. That includes the mayors and the districts and
well,
even prior district members like Alvin.
And if you saw the staff note, I think we said we subsequently discovered or failed to recall, but sometimes you need a little shaking of the memories. But the establishment of a cap for CHUMP was done administratively through rules. And so it wasn't out there in a resolution or an ordinance or a reg. And it took, in this case, it took Stephanie recalling it. And we had another little similar incident with how we're approaching LAFCO based on the memory of a previous project that was jarred by a casual conversation 3 weeks ago now. That, yeah, it helps. we'll miss the mayor on this august committee, knowing all those meetings. So.
Oh, thank you so much.
Very true.
Very, very true.
So,
You're going to miss my
Director-
rat terrier. I know.
yes, Director Anderson.
I just want to say as a member of that committee that with the three options that we were offered that were being considered, this was by far the most creative and the least troublesome. And I was really glad to see this option. I thought, yay team, because this was it went beyond just a single isolated fix. The whole idea of the expansion and everything is just great. So I'm very happy about it.
I was not at that committee meeting, but I had the same reaction that this is a very clever solution. And I will entertain a motion on it, but maybe we should go out to the public first.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 15, please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, push star 9. Chair Paul, I see no raised hands.
Thank you, Joelle. Is there a motion on
Yes,
this?
I make a motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. There's a second, George.
second.
Director Riley is seconded. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Mallet.
Yep.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Roberson,
Aye.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Yes,
The motion carries on a vote of 7-0.
very good work by staff and the committee. on
Mark
that.
and Brett, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thank you.
Through the chair, I'd like to just have a comment before we close about a letter in our packet.
Uh-huh, please.
Well, there's a particular letter in that names me personally in various ways. And I just want the district board to know and staff to know that I officially resigned from Public Water Now shortly after the election. It was November 19th, 2018. And I officially notified the Public Utilities Commission that I was no longer representing Public Water Now. And that happened in December of that month. So the letter's got some major errors in it. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Riley. And if there are there any questions or questions about the informational items? Then we will adjourn and
We're going to reconvene in closed session though.
yes, and yes, I haven't forgotten. 5-minute break. Let's see, it's 20.
Recording stopped.
Why don't we reconvene in closed session at 7:30? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Public session adjourned.